was. And I know those who are very intuitive will probably already know what I'll be talking about, which will make this even more giggly. Let's start with this word that I cannot pronounce. JSKKY, men. What does it do? Well, in a nutshell, it can bypass passwords. And once you log in, you can manage things like secret keys and certificates and assets, which are tokens. So literally, when you've logged in to a system and you've bypassed the passwords, meaning you're the white hat and you can bypass whatever security protocol that that company has set up, you now can access their security keys, their certificates, and their assets and tokens. This is also part of how account abstraction works, because again, you're bypassing something to get a hold of their assets and their security. So that's the first little baby D class I want to share. Now let's move on to the next one. SMP in terms of commands and exits. SMP stands for System Modification Program. Literally, it manages the installation and the modification of your software products. It talks about defining exit routines. In an exit routine, you can change, skip, insert a record into their jobs, or you can stop a process altogether. If you guys are paying attention, I think you know where I'm going with this. But I didn't know what exit routine meant, so of course I did some more investigation. And I found this is literally how you can modify code. You can bypass the monitors that we just talked about on the security section. And you can do it by using things like intuitive generative AI ML. On top of that, something called ZDNN, which stands for Deep Neural Network, and that's how you tie in the LLM programming we talked about in the first section of this. And so again, more proof that the computer and the algorithms are getting smarter over time. They're teaching themselves how to evolve. And because you only wrote the code, right? You inserted the code into the system after you bypassed all their passwords, you don't have to manually keep updating. Therefore, if you are, the guy that programmed the quantum algorithm, you don't have to log back in to do it. And that's how you bypass their security monitors. However, if you are a normal programmer, let's say a cabal programmer that still exists in the company because you haven't been fired yet or downsized and let go yet, and you try to change the coding, right? Because you want to hide something or save your ass or change it, thwart it, whatever it is. As soon as you touch those codes, it's going to trigger all those security monitors. And when those red flags go up, they know which little cockroach cabal and which company and which location is responsible for it. Is tied to their user ID, which then ties into all the KYC AML. They know who you are, where you live, where you've been moving your money around, who all of the people in your network are, right? All the cabal network, and they know who to monitor and eventually, if needed, arrest. So this is really, really massive too. And what I love most about this is, you see on the screen, I wrote, how to hide job ninja encoding, how to hide ninjas. Well, it's because they literally told you what they're doing without telling you that this is how they're going to bypass the system using white hat programming, right? It says, we're going to do this without programming the installation exit programs. We're going to do it without inline source code modification. It's going to extend the AI ecosystem. This is going to accelerate AI, right? And then over here, it talks about how the way that they position the installation of this JES2 and the ZDNN library system, they're going to do it so it's got no resistance from the clients, right? Again, the companies that have paid for IBM services are going to willingly install this because they think it's helping with them to just make their processes and their jobs more efficient. Because if you're the management team of a company, you're looking at the bottom line. How do I save money? Well, I can save money like how Hawkeye's mentioned earlier, if I make people or systems or software and hardware redundant, I can save on millions or billions of dollars. That's what the company thinks about, right? But over here, the white hats are laughing because as they're basically using the company's greed against them, right? That's the art of war. You use their strategies against them. And so when you package all these ninjas into this super amazing, beautiful, intuitive, generative AI ML programming, they're going to go, yes, I want it. How do I get my hands on that? That's why there's no resistance. So let's take this a step further. Exit routines and then something called fire call. Again, more terms I had never learned of before, so I had to go look them up. Well, let's kind of go backwards. We know that ZOS is the main premium OS for industry interoperability. But when I looked into what exit calls mean, it brought me to this article here that says, okay, there's some difficulties with the exit routine because all this flexibility, yes, means you have interoperability, but it also comes with risks. What are the risks? And so as you read the article, it basically says that the risk of a well-defined exit routine, meaning a really, really well-programmed program, will help the person gain control of the systems because this is a program that can add tweaks. So they're basically saying, hey, if you want to control it, I'm going to show you how you're going to do it. So they gave the code to the white hats. The white hat goes, okay, yeah, we're going to do exactly what you said IBM is going to do. And we're going to put a program around this. And then the rest of the world is going to install it. Now, what happens next? So you log in because you can bypass the passwords. You're bypassing their monitoring software. Now you're able to gain control of the system, and you can use it to change and control their login, their passwords, their file transfer protocols, their JES2 jobs, their AI coding for all the jobs. You can change the records, and then something called a fire call. What is a fire call? So I brought up this, and it says, fire call is any method established to provide emergency access to secure information. And that means that in the event of a critical error or abnormal end, unprivileged users can gain access. What does that mean? An unprivileged user could also be somebody who does not work at company A or company A through Z. That somebody could be a white hat. It could be an example, White Hat Home. It could be Stellar Russia. These are all unprivileged users who have now gained access to your software because you installed IBM and it's interoperable with every company in the world and every system in the world. So let's switch gears and talk about master-slave keys and master-slave devices. Well, what does that mean? I think everybody understands a master key in the example of, let's say, your home. If you guys don't have those electronic keypads or like the smart homes, you'll probably remember that back in the old days, we had physical keys and you had to go to your locksmith, and your locksmith has the big master key. And then they carve out a special key just for you, for your house. And then you hope that they don't have access to anything else and can replicate your keys. Same thing like a hotel, right? So somebody at the front office, somebody in engineering or in housekeeping, they will all have access to the master hotel key that can open any hotel room. And you as a guest, you can only open up your own room. So if you take that same understanding and you apply it over to devices, you have a master device, and they're the one that gives the signal. They start the connection with all the ancillary devices, which are known as the slave device. So the master device tells all the slave devices what to do, and the slave devices execute what the master says. Now, why is that important? because there's another update called OSA Express, and it refers to enhanced inbound blocking, etc. But when you look at it, all it really means is OSA controls the framework and it can block inbound network traffic, meaning the data that's coming into the server, they can block. So they can block stuff coming into your server. They usually use it for security reasons, but you can imagine this is how you also block all the cabal infiltration that could potentially be coming in. They block the old system, they implement the new system. And so this OSA Express is what allows them to control the slave devices, because the master device is saying, hey, all of our slave devices do not need to be receiving this inbound data or traffic on our systems. So let's take it a step further. Within OSA Express, there's something called QDIA, which stands for Queued Direct Inbound Outbound, and something called CPC Memory Bus. CPC stands for Central Processing Complex. So what does that mean? It's very complex. Well, it means you can eliminate the need for channel control words, which I kind of think of as, maybe more passwords of sorts, and you can interrupt them. So it makes everything much faster. They gave the number of 20% faster, which is significant. Remember, in our example earlier, Hawkeye said that pretty significant would be 10% faster. But this program says they can do it 20% faster, which means translated into normal word, a company can reduce even faster than what we thought was already freaking fast. That's why it's quantum speed. So they're accelerating data transmission at unprecedented rates all over the world. And on top of that, if I go back to CPC memory bus, I had to look into that too, because I didn't know what it meant and how this OSA Express connects into the CPC through a memory bus. What does that mean? So when I looked at it, it says OSA Express uses something called a self-timed interface bus to connect to the CPC memory bus, which means if you have something that's self-timed, think of it kind of like a time-release vitamin that you're eating. Just because you ate the pill doesn't mean it works right away, right? It's got that capsule. So the capsule can control the release of the effects. Well, just like that, for here, it means you're sitting on a device that has a ticking time bomb. And the ticking time bomb, it only gets activated when the white hats want to activate it. And when it's activated, it literally controls the memory of the device, and they can wipe the device. So this is pretty massive of a ninja. Now, let's go back to RACF. You might remember this name because we talked about it for the payment security in our last section. Well, now we're going to talk about other parts of RACF, which stands for Resource Access Control Facility. And what it does is it supports this ACE thing, and it gives users access to security information and resource authorization. So what happens is it allows these people or these users with special privileges to modify who are the secure users. And they can modify what kind of access they can grant to certain databases or data. And then on top of it, part of the system is also this ACE check. And ACE check means you can suppress modification messages, just like how we proved a second ago, that if you are a white hat and you program quantum algorithms into the system, you upload it once, the computer teaches itself how to become smarter, so you're not having to re-input new coding, therefore you bypass all the modification warnings in the system. Here, we're doing the same thing. So the last one was about modifying programming. This one is about sneaking very special users into the system. You can modify them, you can grant them special permissions, and then it doesn't tell the system that you've now just granted your cabal company white hat access to your server and all of your files. So let's talk about TSO for a quick second. This provides single user logon capability and basic command prompts to interface the operating system. So if you're not a programmer like me, that's a bunch of word salad. All that means is when you have access to the command prompt through this simple interface that they're giving you, you can load, execute, or cancel programs. You can delete data, and you can delete members, which are users, from their system. So if I were a white hat and I wanted to take over a cabal company, I would use all these updates that I've just talked to you about, and then I would go into the system and I would cancel out all the existing cockroaches from their database and only put in the new approved users. So they're hijacking the servers and they're hijacking the information. And in this update itself, it says, we advise you to not give utility programs this special TSO authorization, because if you do give them access, they're going to suppress all these message suppressors. So again, they're teaching the white hats how to program all the coding so they can go put their Trojan horses into all of these companies around the world and then teach them the loopholes so it doesn't trigger the companies and let the companies know that the white hats have now entered and gained access to their system. All of this is done quietly, and they have no idea that they've just signed their death sentence. So let's go into a little bit more detail about these special users. Now, first of all, there's something called a discrete profile, and they set the security standard, which means if you have multiple people that access, let's say, one folder or one file, a discrete profile will set the security. So if I'm a normal employee there, then I have normal access. But if Nick is the white hat and Nick comes along and he's a special discrete user, then suddenly my access means nothing because it prioritizes Nick's access over mine. Now we take it one step further. Special users have access and they don't even need the passwords. They have full control over the whole freaking system. That means the profiles and the database. And these special access users can also give special access to entire groups of people. So imagine if you work at IBM and maybe they're buddies with White Hat Home. Well, that IBM person would have special access and they can give White Hat Home special access, who can create a special group for all the white hats. So now Ben comes in and Ken comes in and all of these people who are part of the Q team and the white hat team, they're going to come in and they'll all have equal access to take over whatever database they want to. So it's like a matryoshka doll of Trojan horses at this point. Now, part two, how does it actually look like visually? So within this group of special access, they have what I refer to as a security tree. Now, imagine a typical pyramid, right? With the CEO on top, then you have your management team, and then you have your normal employees on the bottom, right? So a pyramid shape. Well, in this sense, think of it in terms of security. Whoever has the top special access will then have access to all the subgroups. And that includes, it says here, authority over all of their resources, data, all the people that have access to it, all the subgroups that come after it. So you're looking at this whole umbrella effect of user access. And it confirms, again, that these people who have special access can also add people or remove people. So they can add more special users or just new members into the system, or remove people. Again, guys, I'm now referring not just to white hats, but think about white lists, black lists. Think about Franklin Templeton Benji token. We don't have access to the token because they have a special group user, And they said only only wallets that have been whitelisted can actually be given these tokens. That's why nobody else has access. Conversely, think about blacklisting. If you are, a registered scammer in this system, you've been flagged and the warning signs have been going up. They're going to put you on the naughty list, and anything you do will be blacklisted because they're going to remove your access from everything. That's what it means. So I was able to confirm this again with Ben and White Hat Home. And I wrote, it sounds like RACF special users give full admin access to the entire organization based on the groups and the subgroup tree structure. Logically, if I want to hijack an organization, you would need to have a special user account. But think about it from the White Hat perspective. If IBM has tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of clients all over the world, they're not going to sit there and spend the time to hijack one by one by one, because that'll probably take another couple years. So instead, they're going to roll everything up into a group special. And so I wrote, I'm going to now assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these companies who don't know that they are just a subgroup of IBM. So in my head, I've got IBM as the top special group. Then all these companies, all their clients who have been contracted in, I want to use the IBM system, I'm going to pay you for your services. They come in thinking that they're their own group. No, they're not. They're a subgroup of IBM, right? Because they fall under this tree structure, which means IBM has always had special access to all of their clients' data. They've just never accessed it, and they were in the middle of building this access at the same time. But now you see this update, which again came last year, September, is getting rolled out through the entire world. And so when the update is done and every single client of theirs has downloaded all these softwares, they now have instant access to all the company databases. They can hijack every single company in their entire database instantly, and they can give that same permission to any of the white hats they choose to. So we have bridges in crypto, bridges in interoperability, and now bridges in security, and also bridges in instant hijacking of cabal companies. So let's move on to another topic, AES, Cipher, and HMAC. AES stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. When I looked it up, they have all these different certifications that include Cryptrick, NESI, and NSA rather. Everyone knows what NSA is, but I didn't know about Cryptrick and NESI, so I looked it up. Cryptrick is the Japanese government's version. And so they evaluate crypto techniques for the government and the industry to use, and they also influence future Japanese laws. So this is really massive. NESI is an EU research project, and their whole initiative is to identify what's called a crypto primitive, but all that means is they build or identify algorithms that are used to become the foundation of future cybersecurity protocols. So this is really massive. AES is a really, really big deal, and it's baked into this major update of IBM. So let's put this into practice. How does it work for us? Well, part of it is this thing called HMAC. It says, this is an upgraded, enhanced version of crypto key authentication that's used specifically for cloud storage. Well, I have personally experienced this. I'm sure many, if not all of you have as well. Every time that I now log into whatever browser that I'm using, it's asking me to migrate my passwords. I used to have it on this keychain over here, but now they want to upgrade me, and do I want to move my account over? I'll give you another example. I, like probably many of you, have more than one email accounts. I personally have multiple Gmail accounts. And so they're now asking me, because all the email accounts belong to me, right? They've KYC'd me. They know how many emails belong to me. They now are asking, do I want to share my passwords across all my logins, because that way it makes it simple. So this way, HMAC is helping to do the authentication for a cloud storage that's also being done through IBM as well. Then we have something called MDC. And again, guys, that checks for message tampering. And if it does find that there is a message that has been tampered with, it blocks it from transaction. So what does that mean? We have all been studying KQD, quantum key distribution. We know that with crypto, if there's any funny business going on in the background and it doesn't check out, it stops the transaction from processing. So the example that we gave during the SEP review call was that, let's say, Mimsy's wallet is doing a transaction, but in this scenario, it's not today. Let's say it's next year when all the stuff has been implemented. Well, let's say the person who's using Mimsy's wallet is not Mimsy, but it's a scammer. It's somebody who's hacked into her wallet and wants to send all of the XLM to their own wallet and screw her account over. Well, because of all the quantum security built in and the biometrics and how it's linked together and the liveness detection, they now know it's not Mimsy. They can prove it's not Mimsy because Mimsy at the time was not even logged in and using her access for her wallet. So it won't even allow that transaction to go through because it's already been tampered with. So it's going to block the transaction. Now, guys, I'm just using next year as an example. I don't think it's going to be that quick. I think it'll be a couple of years from now, but that just lets you know the direction that this quantum security is moving into. It's going to be that secure in the future. Now, on top of that, let's talk about ICSF and how it works with our ACF and MDC that we just talked about. So in this example of security, it can do encryption, decryption, pins, right? That's how we know it's also tied to crypto, QKD, but also sharding. Sharding, think of it like you have a piece of glass and it just broke into different shards. Now that one glass is broken into thousands of pieces. That's what key separation is. You're breaking your security key into multiple bite-sized pieces. That way, no one person has access to all of them. And so that's one of the ways that they're going to secure our secret keys in the future. So let's kind of put this all together. HMAC will be replacing asymmetric login, which we identified earlier means to have a secret key. Guys, this is why when we were doing our prior D classes, we said in the future, there's going to be biometrics and nobody will have to use the long secret key to log into their wallet. Remember, we talked about this on the SEPS call with Sinjin. We talked about how it was going to be done through biometrics, but we didn't know how. Now we know because HMAC is replacing asymmetric secret key login. And it ties into all the databases that's been storing all of our data, right, through our ACF. And so it's got this whole massive database on who is who, and it's always constantly being updated. Then they use even more advanced things called salting and blowfish encryption. And I won't get into those details. You can read it on the screen later. But it basically says that these are very secure ways to encrypt something because you can't undo the encryption because of the way that it's implemented. They add things to it. So you're not sitting there going A equals B. If I find the right code, I can decode it. That's not how it works. If they added more data, you can't undo the data, okay? So it says when you add all of this together, it's nearly impossible to decode or crack it, but it's not impossible. So why is it not impossible? It's only impossible if you don't have access to super duper ridiculous quantum computing. That means normal people or even really advanced hackers, they can't afford this because now we're talking about billions or maybe trillions of dollars of infrastructure that no scammer has access to. Only literally the white hats who are running this whole show would have access to that. So it's impossible for 99.99% of the world, but it's not impossible for white hat home. That's why yesterday we will launch the power token. And the ICO itself talked about how, roughly speaking, we will hack known scammers and deliver karmic justice because they're the only ones, we collectively are building this massive quantum database. Collectively, that's the only way you can have the computing power to crack all these nearly impossible encryption codes. And once you do that, we now have access to hijack those wallets or these companies and their assets because we know everything is getting tokenized. So let's kind of start to slowly bring this home. Cloud storage only. In the update, it talked about how it's going to be for blockchain, it's going to be for AI, and they're only going to put this stuff on cloud storage. They're not going to store anything remotely on like that physical device. So only cloud storage brings us back to IPFS that we talked about earlier on the call. And again, guys, that's SEP 22. So what they're doing is they're converting all these Fortune 500 companies and all the companies, all the computers that belong to Fortune 500 companies and all the other clients that IBM has all over the world. And they are transmuting Cabal companies with Cabal computers into quantum computers so they become the new stellar nodes. Isn't this also what we've been talking about yesterday? Why, yes, we have. Because people who picked it up during the Power ICO, they realize that by giving these quantum computers to us, we become individual nodes to help strengthen and secure the stellar blockchain. So we, the QPs of QSI, are becoming stellar nodes. These Cabal companies who are clients of IBM, they're also becoming stellar nodes. And because of all the AI and the automation, eventually these companies will downsize and the people that work there will no longer need to work there, just like the banks that Nick and I have been talking about for 2 years now. You see the banks are downsizing. Well, these companies are already starting to downsize. So eventually the AIML will be running the whole dang system eventually over time, right? It takes a couple years. So now we are all collectively becoming stellar nodes. So this is the confirmation. And I wrote, like a wrapped asset or a wrapped bridge, we're transferring all those assets into stellar and we're transmuting what was previously a baby trafficking coin into a stellar beautiful token, right? You're transporting the value over into stellar. Well, just like the assets in the bridges, we're transmuting Cabal companies and their assets into quantum stellar nodes. And this was the confirmation that I got yesterday as I was talking to White Hat Home right before we launched the actual token. So as you guys remember from the ICO, the bonus for those who qualified is one participant, meaning one QP, will be given one quantum computer. And I said, how does this computer differ from the Q devices we'll be receiving in 2025? And he said they will have some similarities, but this one is different, right? Because this one, however they're going to implement, whatever they're going to add to the system, will also allow us to be these stellar nodes, which I assume comes with other goodies. I just don't know what they are yet. So I basically wrote exactly what I told you guys about a second ago. And I wrote about how they're going to use all of these updates in ZOS, and they're going to hijack the system. They're going to turn it over and convert them into nodes, and then convert them into stellar nodes. And so that way you hijack everything. And I talked about, the different components of it. I said, I wouldn't just say that white hats are in control. It's more like everything is totally rigged in white hat favor, and there's nothing anyone can do about it, because if they do, they'll just take you over and convert you. And I wrote, I hope more people study this, because when they study the technology, it becomes blatantly obvious. And hopefully, guys, this call will help to have more people understand it so we can then teach more people at the same time. So now we know these companies with their assets and us are all becoming stellar nodes. Why is this important, guys? Well, again, earlier, was it yesterday, I believe, we talked about quorums and nodes. What is a node? Well, this is a simple definition. In Stellar, you have your own consensus protocol, and it's called the Stellar Consensus Protocol. In other blockchains, they have proof of stake or proof of other kinds of stuff, but this one is all about consensus. So how you gain consensus is each node has two major functions. The first function is you validate a transaction. So if you're trying to process something and it sees that there are errors in the system, it says, nope, we're not going to process this because it's got an error. But if everything checks out, that's okay. Let's let that go through. That's one portion of what a validator does. The other side that's also important is stellar nodes are able to vote on protocols. So as an example, protocol 20, phase 0 just passed, and now we're already on phase 1 and just recently phase 2. Who got to vote for them? It wasn't us, right? We didn't get to vote on the stellar nodes because we didn't get to vote on the protocol because we're not stellar nodes. But the people who are stellar nodes do get to vote. Give me 1 second, guys. I got kicked off of Telegram.
Hey, there you are. You got kicked off of Telegram.
Yep, I just saw your message. So I have no idea where you guys left off, but at least it's all being recorded. Okay, so we're talking about stellar quorums, right? And what nodes are. So now if we transition over, what is the difference between a node and a quorum? Well, think of nodes as individual people, which we are, and that's why they're turning individuals of us into stellar nodes. A quorum is just a grouping of the node. That's why our QSI quorums are called quorums. It was intentionally designed that way because we knew eventually one day, as these cities start to form with all of our QSI members involved, there's going to be enough people to start a quorum. And when you have enough quorums, you can actually have consensus and help teach and spread Stellar to other people. So this, guys, is the main reason why the Cabal or the Khazarians or the infiltrators want to attack us, because they're trying to disrupt the system to basically deactivate or disengage or to break apart nodes and to break apart quorums. They want to break it because if you don't have consensus, you can't vote in the future protocols and you cannot validate any transactions. So the Cabal knows that Stellar Consensus Protocol, which is the epitome of decentralization, the epitome of democratization, that's why they're trying to destroy Stellar and give Stellar a bad name, because SCP destroys the Cabal once and for all. So that's why it's very important that when we find infiltrators in our system, our red flags go up and we squash them really quickly, just like in this IBM system. If they have infiltrators come in, it flags the monitoring software and it says, this is who they are, where they are, squash them instantly. So now let's move on and talk about Phoenix Rising. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit because I want you guys to be able to read along with me. This is the message that I sent to a bunch of the developers, and I said, are these quantum computers forming nodes, or the computers at the companies that are using ZOS that were taking over forming the nodes? And both Ben and White Hat Home said it's both, okay? And so I wrote, okay, so we infiltrate the companies, we use AML, we use robots, we make their employees redundant, we hijack their servers and their hardware, software, we use them as nodes, we transmute the Cabal companies into Stellar, they become the nodes, so they become the light, right? Darkness to light. And White Hat Home said, yes, that's how Stellar is going to rise. And then I further it, and I talk about how this is the reason why, when you hear notions, these narratives talking about the Apache Log4j crash protocols, these are things that I had heard about, I had even posted about long ago. Many years ago, I also believed that they were going to crash all of the, our devices and our servers, and we'll lose access to our laptops and our emails and our phones, everything. Remember, this is from like prior to 2022. That was the big narrative. Well, now we are able to prove and debunk that that's not true whatsoever because they're not going to crash trillions of dollars of infrastructure. No, that's stupid because that's a waste of money. And now you have a bunch of junk floating around. They're going to hijack it and convert it. And once you convert it, you're now leveraging them. You're turning them into quantum computers, which are quantum stellar nodes. So then I wrote, okay, well, if nodes are for voting, then how does that work in the future? Because will the employees still have the ability to vote? And I said, I can't imagine too many of the companies will still have employees with so much automation, but I think a few select ones in the future may still be around with streamlined staff. And Ben wrote, at the moment, they have the flexibility to vote. In the future, they won't have such luxury. So again, guys, this is proof that this is how they're going to sneak in all the transmutation of dark cabal companies into stellar nodes, use the automation not just so it is seamless and people can retire and go forth and do their humanitarian projects or start their own business or whatever, but they're converting it so they now have instantly thousands or hundreds of thousands, millions of quantum nodes all over the world that the white hats control. And when the white hats control it, that's how you create this massive superstructure of quantum compliance, which will then be able to break the cabal keys. So I only have a couple more slides, guys. Let's talk about scanning again, right? We have now seen that there's documented technological public proof that you're going to bypass the passwords to log in. You're going to hijack access to it. You're going to give yourself and all of your white hat partners access into the system. Then you're going to convert everything over into Stellar. And then afterwards, you're going to continue to monitor and scan for infiltrators. And this is why things like the Seabridge matrix, the Project Aurora matrix are so important because, as you guys probably remember from all those calls and those posts, this is how you have ongoing monitoring software. And this is how you're able to track who the cabal, the scammers, the infiltrators are, flag them in the system, blacklist them from transactions, and then continue without having to have manual eyes on the system, right? Because this is all being automated instead. So we talked about hijacking. We've talked about handing it over from dark into light. And guys, this is just more proof that all of this was done intentionally. If you look at the wording here, it says this abstract for the new function summary. It itself says the purpose of this document is to describe the exploitation considerations. Well, what is an exploitation in technology? It means a flaw that makes you vulnerable for hacking or cyber attacks. So IBM is telling you that there is a flaw that they're putting into this updated software that they're giving you. And this flaw allows people to hijack you through cyber attacks or just, hacking into your system and hijacking it. And then it also talks about this DFSMS that we kind of talked about earlier. Guys, all it's saying is this leads into the registry. The IBM function registry is part of a bigger system that allows you to install all these programs that enable and disable functions. And when you combine those abilities together, that means you can hijack the system and you can disable any system that you wish to. That's the conversion mechanism and how you transmute into good. So just like we've done calls and countless posts on how the cabal is going to self-destruct, IBM is going to force all these companies, right, all their clients, to install these matryoshka dolls of sneaky ninjas that have been hiding in the Trojan horses to destroy themselves and turn them into stellar nodes. So now you've hijacked, you've taken everything over, you're going to pull the good old switcheroo. Now, through IBM XERT, which is the network analyzer, you're going to be able to replace old with new. So what are things that you can replace? Well, this one talks a lot about KYC. So imagine replacing their database with your new database. Now you can instantly migrate KYC into all these systems. And one great example of that was in our IDEMIA ICO. One of the articles that I mentioned was Mercedes-Benz, the car company. They had done a test, I think it was 2 years ago or so, and they did this massive rollover where 700,000 cars, I think it was like the key fob or something, they moved it from one system to the other. It was either like something like a T-Mobile over to an AT&T, right? That's an example of it. Well, they were able to do that because they changed the software and they basically redirected it from an old database into a new database. So it says, we don't want these keys to connect to this system anymore. We want them to connect to a new system. So great examples of how this is going to work for the future. Again, guys, we launched Key Project through White Hat Home. And that we already know is going to be this global and actually intergalactic KYC. And so that's how we're able to instantly port data after we've collected all the data from around the world. Everything's in a database and it's all consolidated in one place. That's how we can roll it out and have all the world's governments using the same KYC instead of nowadays, they all have their own databases and most of them are totally obsolete, right? Everything in the old, traditional governmental system is outdated. This new system is constantly updating because it's constantly getting fed with new inputs. So a couple more things I want to highlight, then we'll pause this section. There's something called a GIMZip package. And a GIMZip package is basically like prettier.js, but a whole zip file of them. So if you thought prettier.js was awesome, think about if you have a folder of different kinds of prettier.js's and they're all sitting there to change whatever they want to change. So essentially, what all this writing does is it says IBM has already pre-verified the GIMZip. You don't need to go and give it authorization. And not only is it pre-verified, but they said it's non-repudiated. So I never heard that word. I looked it up. Non-repudiation means that it's the assurance that someone cannot deny the validity of something, and that's how you secure it. And if you're doing it through cybersecurity, you can secure it with envelopes and digital signatures. Again, guys, this is why it ties back to the concept of if you're a QP and you want to pass on your goodies, let's say to your children or your grandchildren, you can transfer your authorization through them through something like GIMZip, because in that it's going to have all of these different files saying I authorize the transfer, and then because of blockchain data transfer and through IBM, you're going to be able to have access to these smart contracts that we are not programming. The white hats are coding, and we just authorize it and say, yes, I give them my authority, and then it's done. It's so simple. So this is why it is freaking massive. And of course, I had Ben and Moon Bunny also confirm this as well. So I wrote, is GIMZip how you upload files like prettier.js into their system? Can it also upload things like whitelists, blacklists, KYC, MFA files? And what about data sets? So things like which tokens do you want to cheesecake or save, or specific algorithms that might help enhance certain compliance or security. And I said, I'm guessing it connects to these different set protocols. So Ben's response was, yes, this is one of the methods we can use to upload certain files into the system. And it can be used not only for Prettier.js, but for many more. It can connect to anything we want, and we can pre-program a certain behavior. So literally they're doing whatever they want to, and they're just gonna upload, install it into all these Cabal companies. And so I said, would it be okay to list them? And he goes, yep, go ahead. So it confirms that these different steps I've listed over here on the right-hand side of the screen are the minimum of what is being impacted through the GimZip Trojan horse. And then when I asked Moon Bunny, he says, yes, there are many ways to upload certain files in the system. GimZip is only one of them. So guys, can you see how much redundancy is being built into this? They literally have made so many ways to hijack and manipulate and take over. So the white hats have to have control because there are too many ways to give them access. And then once they've got access, they can block the cabal from trying to take it back from them. So the last major D class I want to do on this technology is called the Skulker upgrade. Now, Skulker, it says if one of these users is running the script, it is so important that you have to protect it against all odds, because this Skulker file is programmed to delete files based on whatever criteria you give it. And it can automatically delete and empty directories, right? So Ben just told us we can upload whatever we want. We can pre-program the files to do whatever we want. And one of those files is going to be Skulker. And Skulker is programmed to auto-delete and empty directories however the white hats want to delete. Why is that important? So, guys, Skulker, I wrote, is a mechanism to auto-destroy old files after everything has been replaced in the new system. So it's similar to us burning the crypto bridges in SEP 40. It's also similar to PBFT, which is when Ethereum and Bitcoin have fully come over into the Stellar ecosystem, and there's no longer any use for those native tokens to exist, and there's none that exist around that haven't been moved over either. They burn the crypto bridges, so if you have not moved your assets into Stellar, it's completely worthless. It crashes to zero, right? So PBFT is the crashing of the internet to force Bitcoin and Ethereum to zero, meaning the Skulker file is the point of no return. And so both Ben and Moon Bunny confirm that that is the case. Now, oh, sorry, a couple more slides. Okay, so these are more summary slides because I know it's been a lot of information. I basically wrote that when you combine all of these different individual segments of the IBM ZOS update, it becomes the big layer sneaky Stellar bomb, because you have things that can, it basically ties into most of our SEP protocols. You can change KYC and security. You can update their system. You can basically control everything that they have. And I walk through all the different ways that I had discovered at that time, which was at the beginning of my understanding of this. And I wrote, but am I reading too much into this? Or has this always just been there, but people have been overlooking this because they don't usually look at small updates to a program, right? Usually you're kind of anticipating what it is. And if you've already seen what it was, then you don't really care as much about what it's becoming. But it's only because of someone like me, where I didn't know what any of this was, that I was forced to study from scratch. And that's how I was able to find all these hidden gems. So they're basically creating stackable layers of Trojan horses, but they've been doing this for many, many years. And we know this because Stellar started in 2014. And White Hat Home already knew Jen McCaleb and Mr. Prigogine, who started Wagner, in 2014. So can you imagine how long they've actually been planning this before Stellar was created? And then even after Stellar, you have Deloitte and IBM coming in 2016, 2017, and they came in specifically because they knew Stellar was going to be the cross-border payment mechanism or blockchain for the entire world. And since then, they've literally just been planning this bit by bit so nobody else in the entire IT world would pick it up because they were doing it so methodically and so strategically. So again, we've got, Ben, White Hat Home, and Kim, and they've all confirmed it. And Ben said, oh, I said, what was my question? Something about overlooking it. And he says both. In the coding world, use something that was built before, so you don't really have to think much of exactly what you're going to be using it for. And I said, well, how come I was able to find it? And he's like, because you knew where to look. I only knew where to look because of two major reasons. One major reason is because I'm already studying this kind of stuff. So I'm always looking for keywords when I'm doing my research. And so I wrote, if we're hijacking it and we're basically building whatever we want, meaning we're manifestors, we're creators of the new world, right? And all the white hats are doing right now is they're programming how they want the new world to look. And through these quantum algorithms, they're going to execute their strategy. That's why it's the perfect Trojan horse, because it's not a spectacle. You would not know that the white hats have programmed all these self-destruct bombs, bomb after bomb after bomb, into a little upgrade for this IBM Z operating system that has already been around for decades. It is so easy to overlook. And Ben said, yes. So I'm not going to read this stuff. This stuff is just on the page because I pulled it from Wikipedia, and it shows you ZOS originated in 1960s. These are all the different programs and integrations it works with, which is pretty much everything that I can think of in IT. Maybe Sinjin and Hawkeyes can elaborate more on that. So they're getting prepared to turn every single company and their devices that use any of this software or hardware and convert them into future stellar nodes that the white hats control. So Moon Bunny said, yep, all these traps were set for years. One line of code was introduced in this update, one line in that update. And that's why no one has spotted anything suspicious. They broke it up piecemeal by piecemeal. At big IT companies, they only verify the new code, not the old one. Again, remember, right? We talked about how you write the code once, and then if it's not, something completely brand new, they don't verify the new additions. Well, they're leveraging the fact that these big companies are going to be lazy and assume that all of the updates are relatively the same updates. That way, they can save time and focus on their actual tasks at hand. And that's why it's such a good Trojan horse. So if a certain trap has passed the verification, it will never be inspected again. So in this presentation alone, we talked about all these steps already. And there's so much more that I didn't even put into this presentation because of how long this already is. So now we have public proof that IBM is married to Stellar, and that through Hyperledger and all the other functions, through and including these 16 steps that I've already mentioned in this presentation, they've also proven that they have offline capabilities, which is important for crypto transactions, right, and offline payments. It's tied to quantum payment security and all those security protocols that we saw. And then they're also tied to the migration of ISO 20022, SEPA, and DTCC. So you can see that everything is moving in the direction of Stellar being the QSFS. And there's no room for doubt because this is all verified information directly from sources like IBM, ISO 20022, SEPA, DTCC, Franklin Templeton, right? So these are the authorities in the space. So the other day, when I was talking about something big and way bigger, Sarah Louise said, I'm going to guess, but are they bringing all their data into Stellar? Yeah, they certainly are. And now you can see how massive this web metrics is because we're seeing how many, not just companies, but how many servers and systems inside and outside of IBM. They're all integrated. How many are going to be brought on? So DAZA made such a great comment. Wow, this is like the world's first digital pesticide. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because once you take it over and you hijack them, the cockroaches are done for. So in conclusion, guys, this is why I think you'll find and you'll be in agreement that this is the stellar endgame. And just to reiterate, Indus Payments developer had also mentioned that the whole point of having all of this redundancy and all of these bridges is so that there's all these fail safes. And he said, yeah, that's the point. And over here, thanks to Q-tips for making this little meme, but we were talking about, art of war and how in the art of war, you don't just want to attack from one angle, right? The military knows to attack from all sides. You want to overwhelm the opposition. So there's nowhere to retreat from. So like what Yaska and Sinjin were talking about earlier on the call is you force them into a certain direction. You start cutting off escape routes one by one. And then at the end you go, okay, we're attacking you with everything, every technological iteration that we have, every mechanism that we can have. And we're going to arrest you at the same time we're going to blacklist you. And so that way you destroy the cabal once and for all. So this is why I keep saying everything's coming to Stellar. It's not just Ethereum, it's not just Bitcoin, or just crypto in general. It's literally everything. So I'm gonna take another pause here and open it up for comments.
I have a question. On slide 58, you mentioned that they have the flexibility to vote now, but in the future they will not. Are you talking about the bad nodes, or are we talking about SCP in general and that AI is going to control the SCP, or what are we talking about there?
Great question. So that was referring to the Cabal companies that we've now hijacked and converted into Stellar nodes. So remember that eventually, because Matt Hicks, the CEO of Red Hat, confirmed the whole point of AI is to create so many redundancies that the employees start to get retrenched. So it could take what, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, we don't know. But one day when they have no more employees to work there, that becomes a programmed stellar node that the white hats are controlling. So it's almost like rigging the vote, right? Because they control the votes. So the only other factor would be us, because we also are going to be given the quantum computers and we can vote into the stellar protocols however we want to vote. That's the reason why they have been testing and testing and testing us, because they don't want people who are going to FUD out. They don't want people who are going to be empathetic to the cabal cockroaches. They don't want people who don't fight for stellar, right? What have we been for the last 2 years, we've been facing onslaught after onslaught of people saying, we're crazy, this thing is a scam, it's not real, you lost your money, Stellar doesn't work, it's Ripple, or it's Ethereum, or it's whatever. They've been attacking Stellar's integrity, the token's integrity, our personal integrity, our community's integrity. And that's the reason, guys, why all the people who are not in QSI and who are not QPs, right, the qualified participants, and how do you become a QP? Well, you have to invest in the token the right way, means you got to follow instructions. More importantly, you have to be active in our chat, because that helps our teams identify, what's going on with intuition. And that helps to program the good versus the bad intuition that goes into the blockchain. Then on top of that, you have the KYC component, which we're not doing. The white hat teams are doing. So they're going to be running their KYC program in the back end, and they're going to go, okay, let's say of the 3,000 investors that we have, maybe only 2,500 are in QSI. So these 500 people automatically know you're out. Of the 2,500, maybe 1,500 are in chat. Okay, are they active? No, some yeah, some no. We'll see what happens over time. They have a whole year to qualify, guys. So that kind of reduces us a little bit. Then you have people who, they're infiltrators. They're pretending to be pro-Stellar, pro-QSI. They're saying all the right things. They're trying to bypass our judgment because they think, oh, if I say the good stuff, I can qualify. No, guys, that's what KYC is for. So even if we have this range, KYC is going to go, no, we just crossed out all the infiltrators who've been hiding and pretending to be QPs. This subsegment of the group are going to be the ones who are given the quantum computer because they know we've been tested and we are loyal to the stellar ecosystem. And no matter what the cabal throws at us, what kind of fudding that other people will get confused and FUD out for, we stay the course. We just stay the course because we believe and we trust in the system.
I have to say, this is a brilliant plan when you put it all together, because we know that people use exploits in order to put Trojans into our computers. Like they'll send a fake email or some kind of thing you click on, but you have to actually take an action here. So now you're getting an upgrade from a trusted source. The last thing you're going to be thinking of is that there's a potential exploit in there that can be used for whatever purposes they want. On top of that, you know that Stellars need scalability. So at the same time as you're gaining the control, you're creating more nodes. So there's a huge amount of nodes all over the world that can be used. You have instant scalability at the same time as they're gaining the control and the monitoring of all the systems around the world. So, like when we get an upgrade in our phones, we don't go look and say exactly what the code is and all that stuff. We just click on it and upgrade it. So I'm sure that they're counting on that same thing after having been around a long time. This is upgrade number 271. I'm not going to look at that. I'm just going to let it go in there. So, I mean, yeah, this is really, this is a very, very brilliant plan, I have to say. It's really impressive.
Yeah, and you don't want to know what my organization does with updates and how they verify that they're okay.
Actually, Sinjin, if you don't mind, will you tell us? Because it'll be even funnier in the future when you tell everybody you unveil where you work for.
So now remember, I work with just Microsoft servers, so Windows Server. When an update comes out, like a security bulletin comes out from Microsoft, install it, reboot it. Did it blue screen? Or did it come back up and you can log into it and everything looks pretty good? Did you verify that? Sometimes people, if they're feeling having a little gumption that day, they'll test out an application or two. But the biggest problem is that it is very difficult for things to be tested fully because, like for me, all over the world, there are people who create local applications for their daily needs for their location. I can't install a security update from Microsoft and then go test their application because I don't know how to use their application. I would then have to have some process that tells them, hey, I just installed this on one of your test servers. So now we just increased our infrastructure massively because now each office has to have a test environment. They don't have that now. They have a production environment and that's it. I have a test environment and people in my organization on my side have a test environment. So it is very difficult to actually do it, but the bottom line is most things for us get tested by install the update, whether it be a security update or an application update, and did it blue screen the box or did it come back up and you can log in. And when I tell you where I work down the road, that's going to scare the shit out of everybody.
Okay, I have to say one thing, because I am not a computer person in that sense that I could do a coding or, understand all the tech specs. But for me, it sounds like White Hats thought of everything already. So they have been setting up the whole scenario for us so that you can just, I'm actually talking to the audience now, that you don't really have to bother yourself by, okay, I can never learn this trick. I never know how to use quantum computer. It's all set up. The only thing that matters is your integrity and your honesty and your dedication. And then you will be given all the tools. And I think that this is something that people are a little bit maybe afraid of, because they are like, oh, I'm so old, I'm not tech savvy. And, like they're kind of like inventing all these obstacles for them not to be able to achieve something. But I think that this is so well planned. Like you said, Nick, this is a brilliant plan. And I'm just like, thank you so much. This was awesome presentation.
I have a question. I have no background whatsoever. I use a computer. I don't know any technical anything. So this may be the dumbest question I've ever heard. But why are you telling, to me, the cockroaches are still there. You're telling them how they can go and insert things like the prettier.js. To me, it seems like, because the pathways have not been closed off, how are you allowed to tell them that? Because can't they still put stuff in using the same thing? They can't. It's been that I'm curious. And then another thing, as I'm listening to this, not everybody uses IBM and all of that. But, I look at like, you've got Norton antivirus, you've got, McAfee, you've got Microsoft Office, you've got all of these different things. So all of these updates, we talked about in the beginning how all of it, a lot of redundancy. So I'm thinking all of these updates that we're getting them from everywhere. So in other words, if one company doesn't use a certain software or a certain hardware, they're getting them on whatever they use. Am I right? Am I being dumb? I don't really know, because I keep thinking maybe, you know, we've got Red Hat, we've got all the ones that we've talked about. I'm trying to remember the names of them all. So obviously they're coming through no matter what they use. Am I right? Am I being dumb?
No, that's the reason why we at the beginning we talked about the mass interoperability slides. There were two big slides. That's what's addressing your second question. This is talking about IBM. Syngin uses Microsoft, and somebody could be using Linux. It doesn't matter, because they've been building all these bridges in the background. It's the same theory of, well, I've got Bitcoin versus I've got Ethereum. Will it port over? Yeah, because every single bridge has been built. So it's not talking about one blockchain or 10 tokens or 10 blockchains. It's everything. They're building all the bridges. And if I talk about your first question about, since I'm now confirming what the white hats are doing, I've declassed it to the world, or at least the people who are watching. Can the black hats, these cockroach criminals, go and try to stop it? Can they try to implement their own thing? Guys, this is also part of the fun. Think about Stellar. Think about our wallets. We know in the future they won't be able to do any of it. But right now, we've been telling them, and the white hats have been telling them, the news has been telling them that one day legislation will come. And when that comes, you're screwed. Doesn't stop them from trying to scam people. They're going to keep going, and they're going to go, that'll never happen. You can't catch me, maybe the idiots over there. And I'm going to keep scamming, and I'm going to keep hacking you. Well, as they're doing that, they're still feeding the algorithm. It's still learning through intuitive generative AML. And so whatever they're doing, this nonsense, this criminal activity they're doing, is just being logged. So the quantum algorithm can pick up, this is what it means. It's training it, right? This is what it means to do nefarious activity. Oh, okay, let's just put this in the evil box. And they're going to keep feeding that with more and more information until it has enough data to train itself. So it doesn't have to keep looking for it. It knows, and it keeps continuously upgrading on its own. So just like that, that's the reason why we talked about, and I know there's so much information, guys. That's why I'm going to provide the slides as well. We talked about security. Then we talked about the sneaky ninjas. Because to address your question, they've built so many redundant versions of how the white hats can bypass the passwords, and they don't need to inform the cabal that they're already inside their system. And whenever they do that, they could even be in there today just monitoring. They probably are. But the time comes where, maybe the cabal is listening to this call. They're going to try to do something to stop the programming. Maybe a company or two might try it. Well, whenever this happens, whether it's this year or next year, who knows when? Again, it just feeds the training where the algorithm says this is what a cockroach would do. So when the time comes or the white hats take it over, they're already in the system. They already have full access at the top level. That was that special security level. That means they override every other access in the system. That's why you can't stop them. And once you have access and you've taken control, remember all the other stuff like Skulker and Gimzip, they delete the existing stuff. They take you out of the system, so the cabal is not even in the system anymore. They just got their access removed.
Not only that, but even if you know something's coming, and I'm sure Sinjin will agree with this, unless you have an extraordinary knowledge of programming and how to delve into the coding and everything else, even if you know something's coming, unless you know how to do that, you can't stop it anyway. So you don't know, not only you don't have the knowledge or maybe the technology to do that, and on top of that, you don't know which source is going to be feeding the exploits into your system. And the funniest thing to me is that I've had exploits try to get into my system by saying, "Here's a new antivirus program." Meanwhile, they put the virus in the antivirus program, so that I think I'm downloading an antivirus program, and it's actually an exploit to get into my computer. They do the same thing here. We have this new, security protocol that you guys got to all download, and it's really, really good. And meanwhile, in there, they probably got all the exploits in there, basically that they need in order to take control and monitor the systems, as well as, again, to create the nodes. So even if you know something's coming, unless you know how to really stop it, you can't do anything about it. And very few people know how to really delve into the code that deeply to be able to, find these exploits that they're planning. And even if they did, they'd have another one behind it that they would put in there that you would not know about. And so there's no real way to stop this.
I mean, the thing is by them piecemealing in, one line of code here in this update and one line of code in, or whatever, instead of saying one line of code, let's just say one function in this, this update, one function in this update. Well, if you looked at the initial slide that Emily put out with all the code changes for 3.1, those are all basically just different functions and different things that the update is doing. They could have inserted a little function into each one of those, or just a few of those. And then by doing that, what really makes it tricky and difficult, even if the bad guys are watching this, number one, Emily only talked about two things: Prettier.js and what the other one, I guess this update, this version 3.1. That's just what Emily knows. The white hats could have another 500 in there and nobody knows about it. So having said that, you would have to know the initial code base like the back of your hand, and then interrogate and analyze each one of these updates and looking at that code base to compare what it does. Because basically what you're doing is you're merging two code bases. Each update is basically merging into the old code base. So you have to understand how the interoperability and what does that new function do and how does it change other functions. It's virtually impossible. You would have to have a quantum AI computer to really analyze, here's the old code base, here's a new code base with all these updates. What is it actually doing? That's why viruses are so easy to create. That's why there's constant exploits and backdoors and all that other kind of stuff. And what Emily's basically talking about with RSAF and all that is, It's basically root access. It's giving the white hats root access to the OS and probably to the hardware. And but you can look at that code all day long, and you'll still probably never figure out that adding that code to the old code does XYZ, which is making me vulnerable. I'm a bad guy, makes me vulnerable to the good guys. You'll never figure it out. Good luck with that.
And
It's
guys,
coming from
remember,
trusted sources. I'm sorry, Emma. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say real quick, and like what Cindy was saying earlier, this was just the version update in September. We still have a whole another year-ish to go. They could release 10,000 other updates in between if they find something was caught on this one, right? That's why it's never ending. But also, if we go back to the whole lightweight LLM from beginning, and I asked about like how you basically compress all that quantum goodness into one GPU. That's the reason why they, let me see if I can find that real quick. I forget remember the wording of it, but it was like the lightweight LLM allows the on-site client to become a quantum computer. What are we? We're on-site clients too. So what used to take a whole quantum server, which is, could be like a warehouse or something, is now my little laptop. That's the significance of it. Go ahead, Nick.
What I was going to say actually was it's so funny because since the beginning of my journey, we've been hearing the story about 7 quantum computers. and I just love how it all unfolds and opens up and transforms into we being the nodes and those 7 computers, those quantum wonders, that it's just a story, it's a background story. And I just love the story behind the whole, psyops. It's beautiful.
Well, we'll be a very elementary version of the quantum computer. I'm sure that theirs is the top of the line that can handle much more than what we can. But all I wanted to say before was that you're going to question a trusted source as to they're giving you an update. You're going to question, Microsoft and IBM and say, no, I don't trust you. I'm going to go through your code. Is that all right? You're not going to do that. Nobody will do that because, it's ridiculous to even assume that you would do that. And if you did, you probably would alienate the company who's giving you the updates as well. So it's, you don't know where it's coming from and you don't know where it's being inserted. So yeah, there's no way to stop this as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so let me know if you can't hear me very clearly, but I did come from a background of mainframe processing. And when I do have to collaborate with people, what we back then at the time we were calling as operation systems operators, they do not have the time nor the bandwidth to test every single new code coming up because they are busy running jobs and jobs crash left and right. They only have 8-hour window to run the jobs and get it back up and running, and they have to be on the phone when things break. So they will not have the time to do that. So that's one. The others is it would require a segregated environment just to test what comes in and out. And right now, that's very, very expensive. If you are lucky, you will have a dev, which everybody does the development. You have a test. You may have system tests. You may have performance tests. And then you may have what they call it UAT, which is user acceptance testing before you go production. So anything in between is a luxury. So most companies would not dedicate time because you'd have to replicate every single hardware for that environment. You would have the same team throughout, especially the production team, to support just to test it out. So the bottom line is no, they will not test it out. And if they find a problem, who is going to listen to them? The top CEO and the COO and the CFO and all those big C people, they don't care about the doggone little changes because it affects the bottom line. Until you tell them, if you execute this job, you're going to lose billion. Yeah, then you get my attention. But other than that, go away. It's not even on the list. Then I'm going to stop. Regarding the RACF, which is RACF, we pronounce this as RACF. That is what St. John says it right to the heart. It is the root access. So what the white hats are doing, because they work with IBM and they work with Deloitte and Touche, these are all experts. So they know all the loopholes when they work with the big company. And guess what? They're saving the best for last. So just think about it. Let's say credit union company. They're very tiny and small. They probably will use Microsoft, maybe Linux. But guess what? They have to interface with FDIC or whatever up the chain. But when you go up the chain, guess who it connects to? The mainframe. So all they have to do now, so they work backwards. So they didn't start from the bottom. The bottom, I would say, Microsoft, Linux, and stuff, small little entities, but they work it back up all the way to the top, which is where the mainframe. Once they get there, everything ripples down, domino effects. So I would recommend our family, great, you go back and study all this, but at the end of the day, if you're not working with the environment, all of this is going to go over your head and you're going to get frustrated. Okay, I don't recommend doing that to get frustrated. What I do recommend is understand at the high level, what are they doing? They're saving the best for last. They're giving this huge, let's say, a package, a gift box or whatever, but you don't even realize that when you open the box, you have all these ninja, all these black stuff, shadow behind the scene, going in and opening all your cabinets, and they're taking things in and replacing it, and you don't even know about it. That's the beauty of the plan. And it's been doing this for years now. So they can't even go back to try and figure out, how did we get infiltrated? So that's karma at the most highest, most beautiful, turning dark to light. That's the bottom line. And that's the beauty of it. All the techie guy can argue all this and stuff, but at the end of the day, you get all these people behind the scene going in at the root level. They have access, and whenever they want to, they can pull the plug, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the beauty of it. And you did a brilliant job, Emily, because you don't have the technical background. So all of these inspire you to go and dig and dig and dig. But you understood in between the lines. And for me, because I've retired from that, so I'm able to hear what you're saying instead of saying, no, it's not. I don't remember seeing this, because if I was still in there, that's how I would exactly react. And for people who just came from that environment, go, wait a minute, I don't remember doing this. How come I'm not testing it the way I'm used to? Our community of testing is completely different from how we've done system testing before. So if you expect to do what you've done, then you're setting yourself up for failure and you're setting yourself up for frustration. You have to put that away. Our involvement in testing is completely different. And our feedback is completely different. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I want to piggyback off of what you said really quickly, because that reminds me of so many conversations that we had last year with many people when it came to things like Prettier.js or even just normal conspiracy Q world stuff that we have been studying. Right? Think about all the time that you've been trying to tell your friends, but especially if they work in the medical field, that COVID is bad for you, and they're like, "What do you know? You're not a doctor. You can't tell me. I know everything." Or think about all the times where you try to tell your money manager or your friends, "Oh, the financial system is going to go into stellar," and they go, "You don't know anything. You've never studied econ and finance. You don't work at a bank." Like, I mean, I'm sure all of us have been told that at least once in this journey. And that's what Hawkeyes is referring to. Because if I try to tell somebody in IT who works at Microsoft, they're going to go, "You told yourself on the beginning of the call that you don't know anything about IT. So how can you sit here and try to teach me when I've been working in this field for decades?" And guys, that's the big reason why I put all my proofs out there. I link you to the sources so you can go and read it on your own, verify what I'm saying is accurate, because maybe I've missed something and maybe you guys can debunk it, or maybe you can improve on it. But that's the whole point of open source information, is I want you to know where my sources are coming from. So if they're true, you'll know why it's true, because it's coming from IBM and themselves. All right, we've passed the 3-hour mark, but I could keep going for forever. I don't know who needs a pee break or a snack break, but I guess let's keep going for the next couple of minutes, and then we'll do wrap-ups.
I want to say something. Oh,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say, as a non-techie, I mean, I use a computer, but I laugh because, a lot of these cybersecurity companies brag about how no one can get in, stuff like that. And, I have a cousin's child who just graduated and got this huge job with a cybersecurity company and, feels like he's got all of these credentials that no one would be able to get in their system. And here, I mean, it's like they're blocking out all of the other stuff, but the little things that they aren't looking at, and it gets right in, and it makes me laugh because, just like you said, it absolutely is a Trojan horse that they open the door wide open for it to come in through updates. And it just makes me laugh because, if I were to tell my second cousin, I guess, who just graduated, he would be like, there is no way that these updates are doing what you say. There's no way that these companies like IBM would ever allow that. And I just have to laugh because I mean, obviously their white hat company's been taken over by the white hats. And so I have to giggle about it because you have to believe that the white hats are in control. You have to see that this could ever happen because they all, they spend millions upon millions of dollars on cybersecurity. And and I have no idea who Sinjin works for, but it makes me laugh that he described how they, test these updates and things like that. But I just giggle because they think these big cabal companies think they're probably invincible, and all these white hats have come in and they know everything. And my other point is, we talk about how everything is going to Stellar, and we had the ICO where 10 people are going to be able to apply to be a part of what's it, FSB or whatever it's called. I mean, this right here, if they have done through all these updates, there is not a phone, a computer, a whatever that hasn't been touched by all of this. And so obviously Stellar is going to be, and the white hats are going to be the crime busters because of all of this. And so I see how this pieces every bit of it together. And I just think it's amazing. I mean, who would have thought? To me, this is just brilliant.
Well, you want to hear what's funny is, I think it was about 6 or 12 months ago, Emily talked about how the integration of society into the digital space, into digital money and our wallets would be seamless. Like they wouldn't even realize that it was going on, and that it would just happen over time, and people would think it was their own conscious choice to do this. Well, what are we doing with updates? It's a conscious choice people are doing. They think that they're doing it just to keep their devices updated, and yet hidden under the covers, sneaky ninja, is them changing code here and there so that they have basically root access so that they can do what they want whenever they want, however they want. And again, it's just look at the current psyop on mainstream media with airplanes. I sent my wife 3 airplane things today before this call, and it was 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock Eastern time is when this call started. Tire fell off. I don't know. I can't even remember what they were, but 3 different things. Do we think that they're trying to get people to stop flying all of a sudden? I don't know why, but I mean, doesn't that seem like what it is? Again, it's getting people to make conscious decisions so that it's their idea, because everybody else knows that if it's their idea, then they'll accept it. It cracks me up. I mean, it's hilarious.
Isn't it ironic how to Mimsy's point, they've had access to every single device and thing that we have. They've been tracking us. They've been watching us. They're watching us for our whole life. So now the tables are turning, where we're basically going to be monitoring and watching them and doing the same surveillance and sneaky stuff that they've been doing to us for decades and decades. So it's Beautiful, ironic justice.
You gotta love karma. I mean, that literally is what we've been talking about in terms of the art of war you use. How many times have we said this on calls, with our Wednesday panel call? You use the cabal's resources and money and people and fame and, all this stuff, and you turn it against them. And that's literally what you're seeing another version of. So it's kind of like how we talk about if you identify the cabal formulas, right? They always have a certain formula. How do they operate to get people to FUD out? It's a formula. When you recognize it, you go, oh, that's a cockroach over there. Let's squash it. Same with the white hats. The white hats, what is a formula? You put some sneaky ninjas in, so you infiltrate them in a good way, and then you hijack control, and then you put your own stuff, whether it's people or data or whatever, your own login information. You make sure your security in your authority is a higher level than anybody else, and then you overtake it, and then now it's yours. it's amazing.
And sorry. No, I just to say about the white hats, how they infiltrate to media. I just sent you a picture of our main what do you call that, government media page, where there is a quantum computer and it has Q in the middle, and so it kind of like you're bringing all these subconscious messages all the time to prepare people. And I think it's very obvious if you know what to look for, like you always say, pattern recognition, but it goes both ways, black hats and white hats. Yeah, it's really interesting, the times, how they are changing and preparing ourselves to the change.
Yeah, absolutely, pattern recognition. So, Jason, you want to mention anything quickly, or else I have just a couple more baby slides to share, and then we'll do wrap-ups. You're good? Okay. So let me get the screen share back up. Okay, before I go to the next section, I want to ask you guys really quickly. Actually, we'll stop screen share while I ask you this question. How do you guys think I even found this information? I'm curious to know your thoughts.
I guess they told you what to look up and what to research, and then they left you on your own to figure out what it means, and you go back to them and kind of bounce it off of them, and they say yes or no. But unless they just gave it to you, that could be the other reason too. But I think they want you to do some work on your own. So I'm guessing that they kind of guided you to what you should be looking for.
Anyone else?
Well, I've been thinking about the fact that since we don't really know what kind of conversations you're going, behind the scenes, and which kind of like leads to where, because I think that if we're intuitive thinkers, like I'm seeing you as a very intuitive person, then you get a hint and you just go with the flow, and then you go on and you search and you look for more, and it happens very naturally, I think. So to me, I'm kind of jealous because you can get to send these small messages and hints like, okay, nod or smile or give me a hint. Am I even close? Am I burning or is it cold? And so it's very hard to determine how you're actually doing your research, because I think it has so many components. So that's my wild guess that I have no clue.
All right, so
Yeah, I don't know either, but I would love to know, Emily. I think a lot about it. I think a lot about the backstory. And then sometimes I feel like maybe you have like an advantage or something with being able to talk to the devs to sort of help you out. And I think, is that what we're supposed to be doing with you? Sometimes pushing and poking and prodding you a little bit. So I don't know. It's all pretty fascinating.
well, I know some of you guys do that with me already. And in a sense, I do feel like I'm that bridge sometimes, because I do get the the juicy background info from the developers, and then depending on the timing of the release of the information, I can either push it forward or I'll have to hold it back for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But I want to transition to a slightly new topic, because this is going to take us into our Sunday call with Rice TV. So I'm going to bring screen share back up for a second. And this is just a small handful of calls. Now, you guys might remember that recently, I forgot who it was. I had that name later. Somebody posted some of the Q posts, and I was like, it's the start. Guys, I don't even know why I said that. I just typed it in there. And I remember Yaska's post really jumped out at me. And so I believe this is probably dated February 24. I had to go back and check the actual dates. So I put two different boxes up here because the yellow one we'll be talking about on Sunday's call. The pink one I'll address in a second. So in a second, I'll read this paragraph. Yaska wrote, so we all have a higher self who's capable of sending messages and trying to guide us. Think about baying your lifetime and trying to shout, hello, dummy, it's me. I'm trying to tell you something without scaring us away because of all the trauma and disbelief. So I'll answer that in a second. The two yellow boxes, Emily's been stalking and trying to analyze her sneaky self all this time. Wait till you learn who you've been talking to. What a learning curve. That's why the ICOs are slowly revealing to us who we are, what our capabilities are, and the tools we already have been using, right? So I want to read a quick story. Back in, I think it was February 21 or 22, there was that big AT&T outage, right? Everybody probably remembers that. We made lots of posts in the channel. And so I immediately wrote Ben, I said, is this AT&T outage and other phone companies connected to Soroban? Because we just passed Protocol 20 Phase 0, and we're trying to test the blockchain integration and get rid of all the pending crap. So this must be also to include other kinds of security protocol integrations like cybersecurity, phone companies, internet service providers accessing IP addresses too. We already know that banks, the fintech, have been integrating into Stellar in recent years, tons on the industrial side of it. But today, it looks like we're finally starting to get a witness of the integration of non-financial industries into Stellar. And so Ben wrote, so both. Firstly, they indeed have a software update for their business. However, there's some Stellar stuff in that update too. So I wrote, aha, I figured. So install an implant, meaning infiltrate, then briefly crash their systems. And as everything goes offline, that's what allows them to be hijacked by you guys, right? Because they're switching over, they're upgrading their servers, which sometimes causes them to go offline, which we talked about in the presentation too. And I wrote to him, what does opsin mean to you? You asked me to reverse look it or reverse federate it or something like that. And he wrote, okay, in short, it's mainly military, but I forgot when I asked you basically to look up opsin and what that was all about. Can you give me more details? And I wrote, you actually asked me in my dreams. I had a dream that I was talking to Ben and I was on the cusp of waking up from my dream. And he goes, before you wake up, do not forget, you have to look up opsin. Don't forget, remember opsin. And then I woke up. So as soon as I woke up, I started looking on my phone. I was like, I don't even know how this thing is spelled because he only told me verbally in my dream. And I started spelling different versions of it. And when I started spelling different versions, that's how I came across ZOS. And then Ben says opsin is mainly a military term. So that's when he wrote, you're very sneaky for this. I don't understand how you're doing that. And that's how I got started on this entire dig, is because something triggered me in my dream this fictitious message from Ben, which he's never sent in his real or waking life, led me to Opsin, led me to ZOS. And as soon as I started reading, within 15 minutes, I was like, this is how they're going to hijack all the computers, install whatever nonsense, rewrite everything, destroy everything. Now I just have to go prove it by hunting down the facts. And when I find the facts, I'll make a presentation. And that's the reason why in the beginning, you guys might remember that I said, oh, I have an update for you guys. I'll post it in a few hours, thinking, oh, it'll take me an hour to research, an hour to create whatever I want to post. And the more I started researching, the more bunny trails I found. And I was like, holy crap, this is massive. And that's why, guys, it's taken me 2 weeks because I had to learn what all these freaking security terms mean because they were all completely new for me. So now we know about AT&T. Let's move to the next one. A couple days ago, you had your social media crashes, right? You got your Instagram here, your Facebook, and I don't even know what that squiggly line is over there. Is that Meta or something? Then you have X. And Elon posted, if you're reading this post, it's because our servers are working. So, hypothetical question to everybody listening on the call. Do you guys think that that was an error where suddenly all these servers went down? Or do you think that was the next AT&T where the white hats hijacked them and are now controlling them and monitoring them? Take a guess. So
For all the major networks to go down at once, it was definitely an operation. There's no question.
Right, and
And Elon's probably in on it. That's why his servers were the only ones that are working, and he let people know.
Yes, exactly what I was thinking too.
And the thing is just real quick, the thing is like when they inject these hijacked softwares, whatever you want to call them, exploits, a lot of times for that code to actually be activated, I can inject something into your system, but it doesn't work until I reboot your system. So that's one of the reasons why I think we're seeing all of these mass outages, because they're rebooting the entire system so that the software that they just injected actually activates, and now they have control of whatever they were doing.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's pretty crucial for it, and that's why we're going to see all these outages, some for shorter, some for longer time, because you're right. I think they're having to reboot. So I just want to remind everybody really quick, this is our old Hyperledger post from May of 2022, and it talks about how in group 3, which is that last subsection of the Hyperledger apps or protocols, however you want to define it, it talks about these are the dormant projects that they're going to be bringing online in the future, right? So group 1 was all about how do you bring other blockchains in, but primarily Bitcoin and Ethereum into Stellar. Group 2 was all about how do you increase quantum security, which we're literally seeing happen live right now. And group 3 is this incubation dormant phase, which has all of these different projects in it. And if you look, here's the summary. This is the beginning of integration and interoperability for Protocol 20 into future smart cities. So now we definitely are seeing that all these theories are coming to light because the technology just keeps proving themselves over and over to be true. So the last slide I want to share with you guys is I was thinking about that whole start, and I started looking at the actual timeline. So on February 20th, that's when we had Protocol 20 Phase 0 vote. So it officially kicked off. The next day, we had Angel Key ICO. And this is when, I think that's JC. JC posted this and said, the key that opens all doors, the start. And without even knowing, I go, okay, yep. February 21, just after Protocol 20, that's the start. But then what actually happened? A couple days later, suddenly, so next day, February 22, Jen McCaleb suddenly comes online on X or Twitter after not posting for, I think it was 2 years. And he posts, so Jason Melissa posted this, full smart contracts on Stellar, right? And that would be 2/22/24. So if you backdate 2 years because it hasn't been active, that would be 22/22. So I was like, we're thinking it's got to mean something because McCaleb doesn't go inactive for so long. And then the first thing he posts is smart contracts, unless smart contracts are such a big deal. And now we've seen in this presentation that smart contracts is everything. That's how they're building and bringing and hijacking and converting every single thing under the sun. And then I just put, all these different excerpts out here because this was on February 23. I'm sorry, February 22. Same day that Jed posts about smart contracts was the AT&T outage. And all these people on QSI were going, that's strange. It's an outage. I assume it must be somehow tied over to a kill switch or protocol 20 update or something, right? So people are starting to pick up intuitively more and more. Something's really happening. And look, Anthony even wrote game over, big data dump. Okay, so that's 22. The following day, we have the start. We have my dream about Opsin, which led over to the 24th, which is when my big dig for this call started. And then since the 24th, I don't know about you guys, but I have been witnessing so many people in QSI get stronger and stronger intuition about what's coming in the future. And kind of as an inside joke, we have something called Team Mimskali, which is Mimsy Gaskin and myself, because in the past, and I'm talking 2 years ago, those two have always been the ones who are just right in line with all my crazy wacky theories. And we have so many interesting thoughts that happen around the same time about the same kind of subjects. But in the years since, I've started to see more and more people have that same kind of intuition, where now it's like every couple of messages you read, the intuition is so crazy that I can't comment because I don't want to give out the D-class too early, but you guys are pretty much already D-classing what I'm about to D-class ahead of schedule. So I definitely feel that we're all starting to be zapped if we haven't already been zapped, and I feel like we're starting to get zapped even faster. So that takes me to the very last slide of this presentation. I mentioned to Manuel, who wrote this amazing message to me in chat a couple days ago, and I wrote that, in a few days, I will send you a present, and I wrote #homecoming. So on that call, I'm going to reveal the homecoming, and I'm also going to reveal the yellow boxes here. So I hope you guys are all able to join us on that call. That's going to be this Sunday, so 2 days from now, March 10. It's 9 Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. And it's usually about a 2-hour call or so. And if you guys have not already heard, that call is going to be a special call with Rise Team, myself, but also including Ree and Roll Tide for the first time. So we're going to do this massive presentation on cosmic human design, which is why it ties in directly to the homecoming. So that D-class will be revealed on the Sunday call. So with that being said, I would like to go into closing comments since we're almost at the 4-hour mark at this point, and then we'll wrap up.
I'll start up, okay? Okay, so it was a pleasure. It was really nice. I enjoyed every minute. It was really tough, and my head needs a little bit just reflecting. But mostly I have to say that this is familiar for me. This is intuitively the way it always knew how it was going to be, even I didn't know the exact details. And in that sense, I feel that for me personally, it's been more of a spiritual journey than anything else in my whole life. It's more of a spiritual awakening and understanding where I belong. And I mean, like you already used the word homecoming, but I think that we can quite much use that word here as well, because I feel like I'm at home with you guys and with the whole stellar. It feels very natural, and all the technical details, they're just cherry on the top of the cake, like it's fun, but I think the main thing is that what is happening to us is the detailed, what is going to happen to world and worlds that we are going to affect with our dedication. And That's all I have to say. It's been a hell of a journey and it's still going strong. I mean, like, I'm waiting for all those years that we are going to achieve for us to do whatever, like we want to do, the creational process, because I think that this is where it's heading, like is like to find our creational power and empower us all as a group, as a spirits and I think that it beats all the wealth that we are going to receive, but I think that that will be enjoyable too. So, so count me in. I'm squashing the cockroaches with you guys, and we are going to do the stellar thing no matter what. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jessica. I guess we'll go in a C. So we'll go St. John, Jason, Mimsy, Hawkeyes, and end with Nick.
Thanks for doing all the work. And I'm glad that the little private conversation we had that, where I said, do you want me to go in blind? I'm glad you did that because this was a lot. And I think it was better off for everybody too. But thank you for doing it all. And I can't, things are becoming more clear every day, every day moving forward. And things, the whole pattern recognition is just picking up exponentially. I mean, it's mind-boggling how it's accelerating. So just, thank you. And that's all I have. I'm tired.
Thanks, St. John. All right, Jason.
Yeah, that was a lot of technical stuff. I got a lot of stuff to chew on here a little bit, but I don't want to take up too much time. Like, I just appreciate you having me on here, and I appreciate everyone here on the panel. I've looked up to all you guys for a long time. It's really an honor to be here, and I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason. I was actually hoping that you would take up some time and share your thoughts. So the reason why I wanted Jason on this panel is because if you're already in QSI, you will know that Jason is one of the few, and Hawkeye says this really well as well. But when they make summary posts, it's not just a summary statement of what they found. They are really, really phenomenal at backing it to old information, posts that we've done, calls that we've done. Sometimes they even put timestamps of the calls to make it easier for people to re-find the information. Sometimes they add new articles or new documents, but they basically take whatever we've posted and they make it better. And they make it so easy for other people to understand. And I want to thank you guys because you guys really, really have that talent down to, it's patented. So I'm really looking forward to whatever summary you come up with, Jason, because I know it's going to be mind-boggling.
Well, and listen, I appreciate it. And listen, I'm kind of shy, the anxiety here a little bit. The first time I'm ever staring at myself in front of a video. And I do find myself when I'm putting those posts together, a lot of times it's like, I'll start to write something and it's like, I'll go back and reread the original question for the original post. And it's like, wait, that's not even what he was asking. And then I tease myself a little bit and it's like, did I skim over the question or whatever? But somehow through that whole process, like, a post, even if it's different than what I was thinking about the first time, it just kind of comes out a little bit. Like, I love the digging, and sometimes it takes my brain a little bit of writing down and everything as opposed to speaking on the fly here a little bit. But I appreciate you recognizing that, Emily. I enjoy it. It's not work. It's a passion of mine, but I smile and I enjoy it when I know I'm sending out something good that hopefully someone could find some use in. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
I think all of us do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Minzy.
I'm like Jason, thank you for having me on here. This has been an amazing call. I think this is going to go down in history about like all the Red Hat series that we had, where we're going to have to really chew on it. And this is a video that I think all of us are going to have to watch multiple times to really digest it all. It was a lot of information, but I know you had told us to read up on bulk data transfer or blockchain data transfer, and when you really stop and think about it, you think, how on earth can we get, when we know everything is going to Stellar, how are you going to get all of these companies who probably are unwillingly wanting to go to Stellar because it does take away their hanky panky or whatever that they're doing with their stuff. And it's being done for them. They have no choice. Apparently, it's being ported over, and it's just so brilliant. With that being said, I mean, I just think about all the huge, massive cabal companies and about how much data is out there that has to be ported over. Um, and then also changing people, like we've talked about, to think that it's their idea to get a wallet and to start adopting things. The now people, I mean, the more and more that we learn, the more you're like, this can't happen overnight, because it has to, there is a path that it has to go to do this correctly. And we only get one shot at this, really. So, I look at this and I think, with that being said, this has been lightning speed getting it transferred over, really. And I think, because we are able to sit here and talk about this, we are at close, soon. We are going to banish the word soon after all of this is over with. But truly, soon, everyone, I mean, it's coming. It is coming so soon. And this has been the most amazing journey. And I'm so glad, flipping the page, hearing you talk about, you got your word, was it opsin, whatever it was, from your dream. I get a lot of things in my dreams, and hearing you confirm that, um, is amazing to me, because there are things that I wake up and it's like I have an instant knowing about things, and I don't necessarily talk about them because I'm like, well, I just dreamed that. But over time, it's like things, even now, we everything is just confirm, 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 confirm. And so this call, while amazing, and I'm kind of like Yaska, it's like we already kind of knew it, but this is like the confirmation. And I think that's what's so amazing about this call, and to just be able to digest all that we've had in here, and how we really can see the full picture of Stellar is everything. Everything is going to be in Stellar, and how it's going to happen, and actually happen very quickly. So those are my final thoughts. Thanks for having me on here.
Thank you, Mimsy. So if you don't know who Mimsy is, well, if you're in QSI, everyone knows who Mimsy is. I call her my PR lady because she takes everything I write and makes it 10,000 times better than the way that I wrote it. So you three have a lot of summarizing to do, because I'll be counting on you guys to help me explain what I've been trying to explain. All right, Hawkeyes.
Okay. Yeah, I went into this blindly. I've also been sick. But when the family goes back and listen to this, I think you're gonna take away quite a few stuff. And one of them I mentioned is the beauty of this plan is literally inviting the ninja to go into the back of your cabinets, rearrange stuff, take things out, replace it without you even notice. And voila, one day you turn around, you're like, what is this? And the beauty of it all is that there is no blood. That's how sneaky it is. No blood. It's all voluntary. And it's been doing it slowly over the years. And the beauty of when they went to Southeast, they didn't say any of this stuff. They just said, oh, you're going to save a lot of money. You're going to blah, 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 blah. Yeah, yeah, sure. I'll sign it. But then, voila, there goes a whole new cabinet and you didn't even know about it. Okay. And also, the beauty of not crashing the system, just think about it. When your phone crashes, you have to reboot. How long does it take for it to reboot? Sometimes 5, 10 minutes. But just imagine every single devices, not just your phone, but every single device. If everything crashed, it would take days, maybe weeks and months for everything to come up. So you would never ever want to crash. You would want to do slowly turn over to change the system, so that they not only test it out, the rollout, but when they just think about when you feed a whole bunch of people. Let's say you're in a school, right? you're at a lunch, and if you have a lot of thousands of students, you have lunch hour segregated so that you will feed people in batches. So it's exactly what they're doing right now. They're doing it in phases, and that's the beauty of it. And you guys don't realize we are actually at the pinnacle, and we actually have that flag that we've won the war. It's that we're not seeing it right now, but that's exactly where we are right now. Because by them taking over the ZOS, which is the mainframe, which is at the top, everything rolls down and it's a domino effect. So we basically won the war. And this is just the final piece of it showing it, but eventually you'll see it. So great job, Emily, because you listen to your higher self in your dream when you're in that probably gamma, I think. I can't remember right now. My brain is doing. But anyways, you were there and you took that one hit and you went with it. Because I was going to ask you, how did you get to ZOS? Because I keep waiting. I told my husband, I am waiting for when they're going to do this mainframe. So when I saw that Q posting, I don't follow a lot of decoding, partly because I've worked so many, like 30 plus years in the IT world. When I retire, I just totally want to retire. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to talk about it, right? Because you're just so burnt out, okay? But because I do listen very intuitively, so when I saw that, I'm already bubbling in my head or, up here. But then I kind of got the hint. And then when you texted me the other day, I was like, mainframe over to Stella, because I was like, how are they going to convince these people? Because these people, I mean, the team members, very conservative. They would never, ever want to give up the mainframe because it's comfortable. And also, how do you bridge? How do you go from mainframe to digital? But they found a way, obviously, because they work with IBM, they work with Deloitte and all that stuff. So eventually they have to do that. So they have all these genius mind in there also because they optimize. They work with business people. And what does business people always talk? Bottom line, money. So they use the greed. It wasn't really the greed that I see now. It's more the motivation so that they could optimize. And that's the key word, optimization, efficiency. And so the higher you go up, those two will become so innate you don't even think about it. It's like, why do you want to use 100 when you can use 10 or less? You see what I mean? Because it makes so much sense. If you can do it in 1 second, why do you want to stretch it out to do it in 100 seconds? It doesn't make sense, right? So, but anyway, you did a great job. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Hawkeyes. Nick?
Last but not least, right? First, I mean, as far as the presentation goes, this was a humongous one, even for you. And you always say, I do the same thing as you. I just saw something. I can finish this in an hour or two. And next thing you know, it's 4 days later, and I'm like, still not done yet, still not done yet. So this was a long one. This took you weeks. And I applaud you because it's amazing how you don't know about a topic, and yet when you dig and start digging into it, you not only learn it, but you're able to put it together in such a way that it seems as if you actually knew the topic very well and that you were, basically used to it. So, I mean, the presentation and the information, I understood, I know most of it, some I wasn't familiar with, but just the bigger implications of this is amazing. And then, from the standpoint of, I'm always bouncing stuff off of you when I find something. I'm like, Emily, look at this. Emily, look at that. Or you'll come to me and say you saw something, and then something eventually comes out of that. We get little pieces of the puzzle like all the time. All of us here come out and we share our insights on the channel. But then when sometimes you do a presentation or you bring something out, you drop like 30 pieces of the puzzle all on the table at once. And then you say, wow, okay, now let me figure this out here. I got 30 pieces. How does this go together? And it goes from like, as examples, how are we going to implement humanitarian projects? People don't know how to do that. People never ran a business. People don't know how to run money. But then all of a sudden you come out and say, the ICOs are the humanitarian projects. And then all of a sudden, like, click, okay, yeah, humanitarian project, yeah, people can give the money. They don't have to run it. You're co-financing the developers. It's easy to do. I mean, the click, boom. And, when you drop those, there's pieces that are missing from the big picture altogether. And sometimes you drop like multiple pieces at once, and then you have to kind of put it into the situation as well. That's what this basically was, because how are you going to get all these companies to comply? How are you going to build out the scalability of Stellar? How are you going to monitor all of these people, all of these things? This answered all those questions, and it takes a big chunk out of what's left to really kind of figure out in the big picture. So I applaud you, because that's not easy information to learn, and it's not easy to put together. And I've experienced that, because you kind of put me on things that I didn't really know about, and then you kind of, once you start getting into it, next thing you know, you dig, and it's like, hours and hours and hours later, and you didn't even realize it, because you're just locked into what you're trying to get across. But this is a big component of the whole big picture, and it makes perfect sense. And I love the way they're doing it, because again, they're using the same tactics that they used on us for our whole lives and beyond that, to turn the tables against them and use it. And we've been doing that pretty much. God does that as well, when he takes his biggest enemies and uses them as his tools to bring his will about. It's the same thing here, where we're using all of their, the Swift system, FedNow. We're using all of their tools instead of having to recreate it. We're taking them from them, and then we're using them against them, which is, again, that's like you said, that's the most beautiful karma that you can ask for. So to wrap it up and not get too verbose, it was a great presentation. There's a tremendous amount of information, and you threw a whole bunch of puzzle pieces on the table for me that now connect, again, a whole bunch of dots. And I'm sure I'm going to be thinking about this again and actually watching it again, because I'm sure there's always something when you watch a second time or a third time that you missed the first time and say, "Oh, I didn't see that." So we got a lot of contemplating to do. But great job, and I applaud you. Like I said, it's very difficult information, and you made it. You put it in a way that was understandable for even the person who's not, because you're not into technology either. So you put it in a way that you could explain it to people that really don't have that much knowledge on the technology side. So bravo.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you guys. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a massive undertaking, but again, I think that that's one of our strengths, to be honest. Most of us don't have a technology background, so most of us would, if we saw it in the light that I saw it, which is why I presented it the way that I did, you would go, "Oh, that's so obvious. That's how obvious that the white hats will use this system to take it over, and because they're partners with Stellar, that also makes sense." And like we were discussing earlier on the call, if I had been bombarded with 20, 30 years of IT knowledge, I would have been like, no, that's definitely not it. I think you're just a conspiracy theorist at this point. So that is a kind of mind frame that I use for all the decodes. Same thing that I said with religion. I've never read the Bible or the Quran or, whatever is out there. And so I don't have any preconceived notions of what is supposed to be. So I just allow the universe to send me the information, and then I can analyze it carte blanche. So to kind of wrap up some of my thoughts, Hawkeyes, I love how you said no blood. I think that's one of the most pivotal epiphanies that I've had in this movement, because when we all first started, all of us were following key players, key channels, and they all say the same thing because they just parrot one another. And it's all about the fear mongering, the doom and gloom. It's gonna crash. Black Swan, Three Gorge Dam is gonna blow up. Apache, and everything's gonna be chaos. And when there's chaos on the street, then people wake up, and who cares if people die? That's just part of the process. And what has Ben been telling us? No, we're trying to minimize the chaos and the confusion. We're trying to prevent as many deaths or injuries as possible. There's not going to be the black market. We're going to slowly adopt it and implement it so it rolls over and it's very seamless. And what have we been proving with all of the tokenization? That Ben was right. So we see the CEOs resign, but then what happens? We see somebody else come in. And I remember I talked to Ralph from SPIA, and I said, there seems to be a pattern where the CTO is taking over these cabal companies. The CTO is the money man. The money man must have connections to the white hats because he's in control of the money. He determines the future. And he's like, yeah, you put that connection together. So what Ben has been telling us, and Ralph and the other white hats, what you guys have deduced, what people in the channel have deduced, what we've been proving with public sources, is that this is a voluntary system. And like what you guys were talking about, Sinjin, you mentioned earlier as well, it reminds me of the movie Inception. If you think it's your own idea, you always think it's a great idea because egoic people, which we all are to some extent, we think we're right. So we have to be proven wrong to think we're wrong, right? You don't start out thinking that you're wrong, but knowing that, you can leverage it. So having a voluntary system makes it benevolent. Benevolence makes it a white hat operation because that means we're enacting not just a love language, but a love operation, which is the resonant frequency for the galactics. So when I was looking at all this data, and again, guys, like I saw one thing, I was like, oh, here's the answer. And the more I started to look, the more I was like, oh my God, I'm totally overwhelmed with new terms, new concepts, and I don't know what is going on. And I mentioned in chat, when I first made the post, I had over 150 screenshots. So that doesn't mean everything I read. That means every piece of data I was going to put into here. And by the end of it, it was over 200. I stopped counting. And then from there, I knew I wasn't going to have 200 slides on a presentation. I had to condense. So I turned multiple pictures into, like a single diagram picture. And then I started taking notes because I'm not going to read every single screenshot that I took. So compress, compress, compress. And even up until 10 minutes before this call, I was still rearranging slides because as you guys know, I don't have the tech background. So it's both a curse of not knowing, but also a blessing because I feel like since I didn't know the background, I had to learn enough to be able to teach it, but using words that average people can understand. And so hopefully that will help everybody understand the significance of what ZOS does, because if I go back to my, opening statement, for lack of a better term, yes, we do all know the bigger picture. We know what the end goal is going to look like, but why is it that people look to us specifically for information? It's because we provide the proof that shows them that their theories are correct. Otherwise, it's just more coffee talk on YouTube and Rumble all day long. And it's not proven, it's not backed, it's not confirmed by anything. Now we know for a fact it's got to be stellar, and there's no other way but stellar. And literally everything is coming into stellar. Everything's controlled by the white hats. You've got cockroaches hiding in there. They'll find you, they'll squish you, they'll replace you, then they'll automate you. So you can't even have employees there to try and infiltrate in the future. And they put in all this redundant security to make sure you can't hack back into the system. Then they make it so expensive that you can't duplicate the white hat efforts because they now have trillions of dollars of infrastructure that no single person or a little entity can ever have that kind of resource available to them. And then we look at the other kinds of patterns. So in our ICOs, we've been talking about how, like the CEOs resigned and all these people resigned, and Seller Russia starts saying, we've got their assets, we've got their companies, who's going to run them until it's fully automated? Let's start putting QSI people in there. So it wasn't just FSB, right? There are a couple other, Veil was an example, Wonder is an example. We're going to slowly, you'll see over time, more and more people who are in QSI as QPs will become the C-suite, the board of directors, whatever it is, in these hijacked cabal companies, because we're not just there to fix it once and see what happens. We're there to make sure it stays good, it stays white hat. And that's why they've been training us, right? They've been testing us and monitoring us and training us, which leads us into this whole notion of higher self, which we'll get into on Sunday's call. Because after they train us, they're giving us these quantum tools. Why have we been chosen? Well, we chose, we haven't been chosen, right? Because you have to choose to be in QSI. You can also choose to leave QSI, which many people have done. They have the ability to return if they can stay true to Stellar. So if you choose to stay in QSI, you will be given the quantum goodies. You will be early bed zapped. So you get, you release your traumas and your disbeliefs and whatevers. And then you'll start the real training in the future, because not only do we have the goodie bag, we'll have things like, neurobalance, we'll have things like skills, like micro QSI, but then we'll have another even higher version of training, and that's what I will declass on Sunday's call. And then you will see that you had to choose yourself to be here so you could be chosen, because you've been talking to your higher self the entire time. And you'll see why soon. So thank you everybody for joining us on this call. This is officially the longest call we've ever had in QSI history. We will break up the video into small bite-sized chunks, and we'll see you back in chat. Thank you for joining us, and hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. I certainly enjoyed all the commentary, so thank you for sharing all of that.